Good evening and welcome to tonight's Magpie Circle podcast and new territory for us. A Magpie Circle podcast with, other than the first one or two games of the season, Notts County are sitting top of the National League. Great result against Wrexham. I'm sure we can all eulogise about that this evening. Lots of comments already coming in. Looking ahead to Woking on Saturday, joined by Mark Stallard. Evening, Mark. I presume you enjoyed that like the rest of us last night.
Yeah, evening, Paul. Yeah, you couldn't help not enjoy it, could you? I mean, it was a proper match, proper game. Two good teams, great atmosphere. Really good. Just a shame it was a Tuesday night. That it couldn't have had 15, 16,000 there if it was on a weekend. But it was a great atmosphere. Really good game. A really good performance for all the reasons we'll go through, I'm sure, in the next hour. A real ding-dong battle, and that's exactly what you want. A football game. That is the sort of match that you want to see. Real titanic struggle. Really good quality, battling qualities. It had everything. It was a great game.
I want to kick off with a friend of mine, and if you're of a certain vintage, you will remember the name and the player Rashid Harkouk, responsible, along with others, for firing us into the top flight of English football in 1981. Rash, who lives in Snenton now, my old stamping ground. This is what he had to say. Finally, County are showing the resilience and strength to get them out this Mickey Mouse League. Rashid is always straight and to the point. For those of you who don't remember having seen Rash play, naturally two-footed player, scored some wonderful goals. I'd probably say he's the nearest Notts County have had as a player to George Best, to be honest. I think it's fair to say he was fairly flamboyant in many of the things that he did. And I've probably told this story before, but Martin O'Neill, when I was at Leicester, he described Rash as the most naturally talented striker of a football he ever played with. And when you pause to consider that Martin played in a double European Cup winning side for that lot over the river, and John Robertson was one of their star men, that is some compliment. But I want to get your thoughts, Stel, because underneath what it's interesting that Rash, who was a flair player, talented player, you're probably too young to remember him, played in a World Cup for Algeria. It's interesting that he uses adjectives like resilience and strength. Doesn't talk about flamboyance and skill, resilience and strength. And for me, that kind of 90 minutes is a big departure and a big statement of intent of not going about things differently to the way they did last year. Discuss, Stel.
Right. Well, I think it showed all aspects last night, and I think that's the really pleasing thing. We've seen them play well over the last few years. We've seen them pass the ball particularly well in the last couple of years. We know they can do that. We know we've got good players, and I wouldn't call it a Mickey Mouse league, but what he's saying there is it's level. No, but what he's saying is levels, isn't it? If you've been to a World Cup, National League is a Mickey Mouse league to you. It's levels in sport, but they are where they are, so they've got to beat what's in front of them, and they did. In the first half, they played. The first 20 minutes was as good a football as you're going to see in the National League this season, last season, next season, and possibly beyond. It was as close to past perfect as you're going to get for 20 minutes. Wrexham came into the game as you would expect, and then second half, Wrexham chasing the game, threw bodies forward, asked questions, and Notts were back to the walls at times, last-ditch defending at times, throwing bodies on the line at times, reliant on the goalkeeper at times, but they had that resilience. They had that strength that, we were saying on commentary, it felt like just any moment now Wrexham are going to score. Yes, Notts had one or two counter-attacks and still looked a little bit dangerous on the break as the game opened up, but you just felt there was so much Wrexham pressure that the dam was going to break, and it didn't. They showed unbelievable resilience, good defending, last gasp defending, throwing bodies on the line, as we said. Just a really committed, strong performance. And it was, that was the game of two halves almost, in terms of fluid football, 1 and 2 touch passing, cutting, incisive in the first half, get the goal, could have had a couple more. And then second half, not being allowed to play, being out of possession of the ball, having to shore up holes in defence. And yeah, we got cut. Yes, they had chances. And Phil Parkinson, their manager, will say about the missed chances and any other day and this, that, and the other. But like I say, football's never about on another day. It's about the 90 minutes that you play, or the 100 minutes with injury time that you play. And Notts showed every facet of their quality, from in possession, out of possession, and showed that they've got the fight and grit for the battle. And that's probably as pleasing a thing as possible when you look at the opposition that we were playing against.
Very good. Let's get some thoughts from the message boards. There's quite a lot of them, as you would imagine. Rich Hawksworth, evening all. He's asking about Macca, Peterborough, Barnsley. Are we going to keep him past January? We'll come on to that later in the programme. Let's at least enjoy and savour the moment for a little bit, for at least the first half of the show, Rich. Karen Knight says, hello, everyone. What a night it was. Fantastic. Paul Huskerson, evening all. The big picture people, well worth the return drive from Newcastle with my dad. We listened to Stell and Charlie's commentary all the way home. We got back at 1 a.m. and we were still buzzing. Paul Hawksworth adds, the love is back. I'm 55 and I said to my lad last night, who's 20, this is what it was like when I was your age. Jürgen Halligan, evening all, what an atmosphere last night. Adi Clark, saw Adi last night, absolutely brilliant performance by players, staff and fans. Starting to believe there is something special building this season. P.S. Love the Stell. Get in. The most excited I've heard him yet. Rich Hawksworth adds, Parkinson's post-match thought he buried his head in the sand somewhat and didn't give us the credit we deserve. We'll talk, and I have no idea whether there's a release clause or not, but again, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Chris B, great win, but let's not get carried away. We haven't achieved anything. Don't put in a performance on Saturday or in the coming weeks and it'll mean nothing. Rich Hawksworth, Super Rash is spot on, as in Rashid Harkout, by the way. Chris Gosling, I couldn't get to sleep until gone 2, as I was still excited from the game. Back up at 5:30. God, you were up earlier than I was, and I bet Stell. Still buzzing. Hopefully I can get through this pod without falling asleep. We'll do what we can. Paul Hawksworth says Rash should be compared to Glenn Hoddle, not George Best. I certainly think the way Rash lived his life, it was more George Best than Glenn Hoddle, Paul. Chris B, listen to Parkinson's interview, not the most magnanimous I've heard. Apparently we were lucky against Altrincham too. Ian Greasby, they keep coming. The performance was excellent last night. The thing I would call out over last season is the work rate out of possession. It's exactly the interview, I believe, that Charlie did with Luke, in which Luke was talking about that. I listened to that just before I came on the show. Jack Hobbs, I honestly think we would have crumbled last season in that second half. Couldn't agree more. Derek Flowers, Wrexham have spent all that money, but they played lumpic forward football. They're nothing special. I disagree with you there, Derek. I think they're a decent team and built in a certain way to achieve promotion, kind of utilising the characteristics of their manager. Chris B, when Brindley gave that 90th minute free kick away, everyone else getting Grimsby flashbacks. Going to talk about that in a moment, Chris. Shane Walker, evening all. Well happy down here on the south coast. Just love listening to Charlie and Stell. We had the big picture guy talking about up and down from Newcastle. Stell bumped into or introduced himself to me, a guy called Paul Rain, who was in hospitality last night, and he was outside having a fag, and he was telling me he commutes to Notts games from Gloucestershire and has done since 1990. Wow. never ceases to amaze me. It's not just Notts fans, but the lengths to which people will travel to watch their team. You know, to come from Gloucestershire, to come from Newcastle on a midweek evening with traffic the way it is in this country. It's phenomenal sacrifices and passion, not just at Notts, but that people show for their football club. And it's so good when you get events like last night where everything is rewarded, because for one of them, there's probably 2 or 3 others that are absolute disaster areas,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, football's in your blood. It's in your DNA, isn't it? It's in you. That sort of love. I say, great. That people do have that passion and commitment, driving and travelling all their miles. In fact, last night, and I don't know the guy's name, but he might be somebody. I think you've commented on here before. He was over from Arizona. And he came and spoke to me and Charlie, and he's obviously a Nottingham fella, and he lives in Arizona. He says he comes over for 1 week a year. He was there against Altrincham on Saturday, and he was there last night. He came and spoke to me and Charlie, and just sort of say, listen to you in Arizona. And you think, it does strike home a little bit that it's not just Notts-based fans. It's global. It is global, and people spread their wings and go far and wide, but they never lose their love of the club that they follow. And when people are in this country, like say whether it's Gloucestershire, whether it's Newcastle, just tremendous commitment, tremendous cost and time to do it, but it's in you, isn't it? It's the passion that we all have for clubs and for football and sport. And I say jokingly to people who I know that aren't so bothered about, I don't know what people do who don't like sport. What do they get excited about? What do they, like me getting excited at the goal last night? You're right. When the goal went in, I strained my throat for a bit. It just had that feel about it last night. It's just it makes you do things in the cold light of day. 24 hours on, I go, what am I doing? But that happens. That happened as a player, and it happens even now. And I think everybody who supports a club and it means something, they'll know exactly what you're talking about, because you do stuff and it just gives you that out of body experience, that sort of losing control for a bit. And you say for every one good experience, there's probably 2 or 3 bad. Well, I think for Notts, it's probably 5 or 6 or 7 bad ones for every good one. But we need to enjoy the good ones, because that's what it's all for, and that's what keeps us going. Now this season, this is something. This feels like, and we don't want to get carried away because we are only a quarter of the way through the season, but this feels like something really good is building. Not just because we beat Wrexham last night. It was building before that. It's been happening. The level of performance over 12 games has been the most consistent at a high level than any Notts team I've covered. So, yes, I know it's National League, but in terms of consistency, work rate, in possession, out of possession, all the things that encompass a football team, a good football team, they've got it, or they're showing it, and they've shown it for the majority of 12 games. It's not been a case of one good performance, one poor performance, one after the Lord Mayor show, which we've seen previously. It has been fairly solidly good performance after good performance. 1 or 2 drops, of course, you're going to get that. But I think it's exciting where they are. And now, we make sure Woking on Saturday isn't an after the Lord Mayor show. But let's enjoy this while we're here.
Absolutely. Andrew Blatherwick, evening all, slightly late on parade, apologies. 10 are fine, Andrew. Craig Simmons, honestly, what an advert for National League football that was. Derek Flower says, does anyone listening know that the lady who fell down the steps in the Derek Pavis stand was taken to the first aid room? Anyone know how she is? Hopefully she will be all okay. And all the better for not conceding from that 90th minute free kick. And I think it's Chris Gosling, one of our regular flock members, wrote quite a long piece on social media today. And he spoke about the thoughts that go through your mind in the 90th minute. We all think back to Grimsby, free kick given away. Some people would blame Jayden Richardson, but ultimately there's still a lot of pressure on that team to score a goal from a set piece. More often than not, the defensive side should triumph. Grimsby did us that night, and clearly we spoke a lot on Monday night in the show, Stel. Wrexham have a huge propensity for late goals. You only have to look at the weekend. And so you're going into a truly pivotal moment of the entire 90 minutes, but it's the last 30 seconds of the 90 minutes or 95 minutes. And you think, crikey, if Wrexham get it here, they go home happy. There's a mental barrier to overcome. And I liken it a little bit to England and penalties and the problems we've had with penalty shootouts. When Gareth Southgate came in, we beat Colombia, I think, if memory serves, and we've gone on from that and done really well. But you have to kind of get through that moment. And I thought, when that free kick's coming in, I thought that was quite a seminal moment for Notts, because it's not a case of being a weak underside. It's not a criticism, but we have conceded far more late goals than we have scored. And you kind of think we'd have to reverse that trend a little bit this season. So I think it was immense when they've put the ball in, they've got all the big units up there, and it kind of drifts over and across at the far post. And there was a collective sigh of relief, wasn't there? A huge collective sigh of relief, and thought, wow, the team that's probably the best at scoring late goals, top of the table, they've had that chance, and we've got through it. Huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
Do players and teams still, as a player, are there mental blocks in certain kind of occasions if you haven't won for 8 games or you can't win away? Or do players get mental blocks in those situations?
Not really. Not from my experience. I think what it comes from is just the pressure of the whole situation. The knowing that it doesn't matter whether it's Wrexham who, in the 90th minute of any game or the last minute of any game, if you've got a slender lead, but you're under the cosh, you're under the cosh. And you've worked so hard for 90 minutes to get yourselves ahead that it could all be taken away from you in the last kick of the game or the last minute of the game. So that's the bit that you appreciate of, look, this is it, defend this and we win the game. You don't, your mind, you're in the game, you don't think back to, right, these are good in the last minute and we're not, we've done this before. I must admit, even on commentary last night, my mind never went to Grimsby at all.
Really?
When that free kick. No, honestly, only with you saying it tonight, I thought, okay, it was very similar, but it never, that said, we could all hear the collective gasp as it drifted out the far post. Not because my mind went to Grimsby, just because they'd worked so hard for 90 plus minutes to keep a clean sheet and make sure that they were noses in front, that you thought, this is going to be an absolute, it's going to feel like a daylight robbery if we don't end up with all 3 points here. And you're so close, you can nearly touch it, but until the final whistle goes, it's not in the bag. And then to see the free kick, disappear beyond everybody and out, then there's that collective sigh of relief. But there's no players. I say you're so in the game. You don't. It's only afterwards you can sort of like 24 hours on. I say I can think, it was similar to that Grimsby free kick, but at no point in the game, and I guarantee you, at no point in the game at the time did any of the players think of it, because they're so focused on picking up who's there, man. What space am I in? What's my job? Let's go and win the ball. At least that's what I hope. That's for other people. All that sort of stuff is generally for other people on the outside to think about and worry about and panic about and keep us all on the edge of our seats but no, players not in the game, they wouldn't think anything about it.
Okay, we certainly did. The big picture, people. It was Grimsby deja vu for us. The collective sigh was deafening. Chris Gosling mentioned Sam Slocum. We'll come on to Sam in a minute. Rich Hawksworth, I said at half-time that the football we are playing this season is unrecognisable as compared to last. Luke Williams is indeed an upgrade, and he so far deserves massive credit. John Parnham, I live in Nuneaton in North Warwickshire. I couldn't make it last night, but was at the Altrincham match on Saturday. It's worth the journey when we play like we are doing now. I'll tell you one thing I've noticed in the past 24 hours. Stell. There's one thing no one's been talking about that last season it would drive me insane. Now, you know what that is. Stats. No one has mentioned anything about statistics. No one's talked about how we had a load more possession. I don't know whether we did or we didn't against Wrexham. No one's talking about XGs. You know, I think one of the things that tipped me over the edge after we lost to Grimsby last year was data being put out that we had far more progressive incursions into the box than Grimsby did. Like, what does that mean? You know, statistical, meaningless drivel. And I thought last night was a fantastic advert for the National League, a brilliant, wasn't just a football match, it was an event, it was an occasion, wasn't it? Everyone, we're listening to those messages tonight, everyone is buzzing. And I have no idea whether we had more possession than Wrexham or not. I really don't give a damn. And it is interesting now we're getting the results in the right place. I don't know whether it's subliminal. We seem to be a more basic, I would call it a working class approach to football. It was certainly something that Luke picked up on last night when he majored on how much work is done out of possession.
Yeah. Look, the stats are there. The stats are always there nowadays. They collect the stats from every game, and they have analysts who permanently be looking through statistical data and things like that. I find in the general eye, the public's eye, if you like, the downside, or not downside, the thing that I find stats are used for, and particularly when managers come out post-match or, post a game, they're thrown out a lot more when you haven't got a result, when you've been beaten or you've not got a result, because they can throw out a stat that sort of backs up, oh, well, we weren't terrible, look, because we got X, Y, and Z. We had X amount of possession. We ran X amount of kilometres. We did this. We had so many entries in the final third. We did, or whatever. And the beauty, but also the not fallibility, but the sort of the get out use of stats, I think it's because there's so many stats there, you can cherry pick what you want, and you can throw them in. Was it Van Gaal came in famously a few years ago when he was at Man U, didn't he, with a list of stats about Liverpool or vice versa? You can cherry pick what stats you want to make whatever point, and managers
they can be manipulated, can't they? They can be
manipulated
to whatever the point you're trying to make.
Exactly, yeah. You can manufacture, you can cherry pick what you want. If you don't like, and I don't know all this, so if you don't like incursions into the final third, if that don't look good, we'll find something else. We had more possession, we'll have that. We had more passes in the final third. We had more shots on goal. Stats have always been there. They're just now there's that many. It used to be sort of goals, corners, free kicks, bookings, red cards. That's it. Now it's everything. Everything is analysed and assessed, and there is data for it. And I've said before, that the clubs and the players and the managers, the coaches need to use that data because it's a helpful tool for them. But in general use, in general life, whether it's social media or chatting down the pub or whatever it is, when you're winning, you don't need stats because you're winning. The points are the only stat that anybody cares about. The position in the table is the only stat people are caring about at the minute. They can be trotted out to sort of give an acceptance of a bad result. So, and I don't, not picking on Ian Birchley, just the last one I can remember, last season when we lost, would frequently come out with, but we had so many, we were so many entries in the final third. We had this, and that's fine, and that's great, and he's not lying. And managers that come out with this, they aren't lying, but it gives them a bit of a, I don't know. For me, it's a little bit of an excuse. It's a little bit of a get out of jail free card. Bottom line is you've either won, lost, or drawn a game. And what are the reasons for it? You can dip into the stats, and like I say, stats are, they're factual data. They are things that have happened. But as we all know, you can read data and read stats any way you want. The fact that we aren't particularly hearing too much about it, and I was saying on the radio, we were dominating possession. but I don't need to know whether that's 63% or 68%. We dominated possession, and how well are we playing?
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you get a good result, a positive result, like Notts have predominantly done this season, you don't need to dig down any deeper than that. You don't need to get into the nitty gritty of, was it 63 or 68%? It doesn't matter. We dominated the ball. We were the better team. We won the game. I think the stats get more of an airing when you're not looking for excuses per se, but I think they can be used as a little bit of, well, it wasn't all bad. Yeah, we lost, but look at this. We had these stats in our favour. So, yeah, I think that's why we're not hearing so much about stats, particularly because nobody cares. We're winning.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. That is the bottom line. It's about winning. We've said it on here many times, all the different managers. It's about winning. That is the only stat that matters.
Chris Gosling, he summed it up quite well. Statistically, we are the best in the division after 12 games. Gareth Smithhurst, blue collar team. Chris B, 1-0 is a stat. Ben Hawksworth, stats are often used as justification and as an excuse. ZO says, maybe the fitness levels this season are a big part of what we are doing. The energy all over the pitch, and that's sustained for 90 plus minutes. The Grimsby outcome, much less likely. Chris Gosling asks, Wrexham fans seem to be hanging into the hope that we can't play with that intensity for 46 games. Paul Willits, the Wrexham board, was saying they don't think, I see in the Wrexham message board, not the board of directors, as far as I'm aware, don't think Ryan Reynolds was there, was saying they don't think Notts can match the high tempo and pace all season. What does everyone think? Shane Walker, the only stat that counts is points total on April the 29th. Chris B, in all seriousness, stats are useful to identify trends across a number of games, not individual games. Andrew Blatherwick, it looked like our strongest starting 11. The bench wasn't too shabby either. Chris Gosling, what a big thing last night was the quality we could turn onto the bench, and the team wasn't any weaker. We didn't have that when Cal limped off after 10 minutes in the playoffs. Andrew Blatherwick, some stato on Twitter, said that this is Notts' fourth best start to a season in all of our history. Mind-boggling, if true. Yeah, I'm not. I struggle to accept that you can compare National League statistics with one of the founder members of the Football League, if I'm honest with you. I would argue that 2 points from the first 10 games in the top flight of English football is a better start than in the National League, but that's just me. Zedo, happy we haven't expanded the squad to previous levels. The tight-knit squad, all involved and happy, can always reinforce if injuries and fatigue dictate. Right, there's a couple of shirts of his shirts up here behind me. Thought I'd just, make mention of it and draw attention to it. Sam Slocum. Charlie did a great interview with him that I caught in the car on the way back last night. Speaks very, very well, Sam, and I thought it was very illuminating. Not the usual anodyne soundbite. A lot of serious insight into the makeup of a pro footballer and the ups and downs that he's had to endure. I thought it was excellent. We're going to try and get him on a one-on-one. The save Palmer was possibly game defining, the one-on-one. He's had to go through a lot, hasn't he, the last 12, 14 months here, with a not insubstantial section of the fan base kind of saying, Patterson, we just need any other keeper other than Sam. He can't do the kick-in that's required. He doesn't fit into the system. What would you be saying to that, Stel?
Same as I've always said. He was excellent last night, but that doesn't. I don't change my opinion of people on one game to another. So when people were saying, "Oh, he wasn't great at Dorking," I go, "Well, no, he's better than that." But he's still a good keeper. I've said it all along. He's a good keeper at this level. He's. Well, I don't see too many better at this level. And you're right, he's gone through a lot. When Anthony Patterson came in, he found himself out of the team at Sam's age. It's not what you want, obviously, and you could forgive him for maybe thinking that he's seeing the end of his career there.
Yaros at the end of last season.
Yeah. But as a player at that sort of age, you've got to deal with that. You've got to get your head around. Oh, is this guy ending my career here? With the manager fancies another keeper, another player, no matter what position you are. But in Sam's got, hold on, where does this leave me? Being number 2 for a bit, and then where do you go from being a number 2 in a National League club when you're sort of mid-30s? So he's done brilliantly well to keep his head down. He's a good keeper, a really good keeper. Just because he had a really good game last night doesn't change anything. Just like having a poorer game at Dorking didn't change anything. This is the thing I try and get through to people. It frustrates me in the modern world because it's everywhere, and I know everything's either amazing or it's terrible.
No middle ground.
You're either a saint or you're evil. Good players can have bad games and be out of form, and I say bad players, but average players or less good players can have good games. It doesn't alter the fact, over a period of time, like the guy that said about data, over time trends a certain way. That tells you a little bit more. From game to game, players, he's had a really good game last night, and I would have had a great shout for man of the match for me, because I think the save, not just the one-on-one, I think the save from, was it Palmer? He tried to bend it in the far corner earlier on in the second half. He makes a great save with his left hand, and I think on the highlights it was going in. It's a great save, but he is a good goalkeeper. It doesn't surprise me. I'm not sitting here going, crike, I didn't know Sam had that in him, because he's a good goalkeeper. He speaks well. He's, say that interview. I think even he got a bit excited last night in the post-match interview. I think he was enjoying the atmosphere and that, because that's what you live for as a footballer. You don't become a footballer with dreams, or when you're a kid, you don't dream of growing up and playing in front of one man and his dog down the local park. You dream of playing, in full houses, really exciting games. And that's what last night was for Notts. It's not a World Cup final because players of our level and this level don't get to play in them. But these are as good as you could possibly get, and that's what you want. And so you enjoy it. And so I think Sam did get a little bit excited. He did get a little bit carried away last night after the game in his post-match interview, and that was just a sign of you still love it. You still eat, sleep, drink it, breathe it, and you want to do well. And to have to cope with nowadays criticism, as has always been the case, but now your criticism is in your face via social media, which I'm pretty sure Sam doesn't do. But it'll get round to you, and everybody, bar none, has got an opinion. And most people have got an opinion that isn't, he's a good goalkeeper. It's, he's rubbish, or he's brilliant, and it's not about Sam, it could be anybody, and they have a good game. He's amazing. That's just the world we live in. And I think Sam is big enough and strong enough mentally to deal with that. And I think he's shown his mental strength over the last 12 months with the Anthony Patterson, Václav Jaros situation coming in, him not being automatic to the first choice. But as they said last night as well, you always want that as a player. You want somebody pushing you from underneath or from behind in terms of competition for places, because that's what gets the best out of yourself and keeps you on your toes. But he's a good goalkeeper at this level. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to now go, he's the best goalkeeper in the country after last night. But I'm also not going to say after Dorking, no, he's not good enough, he should be dropped. Football is ups and downs for individuals. Form is temporary. Class and quality is permanent. And you are at a level that you are at. And sometimes you have good days that you play above yourself. Other times you play way below yourself. But last night was a really good night for him, and he should enjoy it, because he has had a little bit of stick, and he has had one or two ropey performances. I'm sure he will admit that himself. But overall, he's a good keeper. Nothing has changed in that respect.
Rich Hawksworth says, Wrexham website today full of stats from the first 10 games. Chris Gossing says, Wrexham said they sold 2,100 and just under 1,900 turned up. Did the other 200 think they'd signed up for a streaming service? Remy Sky, he's a Notts fan from New York, Stel. He was on the show on Monday. Cheers, gents, pies and ladies, Mr. Mays, Lord Stallard. He's a man of many words, is Remy. Happy to know out here in the States that Ryan Bad Romantic Comedies Reynolds had a poor night's sleep courtesy of the boys in black and white. So I'm presuming Ryan has been busy tweeting about his beloved Wrexham losing last night. Chris Gosling, the biggest improvement with Sam is his starting position is so much improved, which is vital if we play that high line. James Shipley says, good keeper for this level, was outstanding last night, but across the season has a game-losing mistake in him. Great guy and great professional. Andrew Blatherwick replies, all keepers can cost their team a game with a mistake, James. Maggie Grant says, hello, good evening, Maggie. Chris Gosling, to be fair, the Wrexham keeper made some great saves too. Was it second minute? Langstaff, close range header, tipped that one away. To Derek Flowers, I thought Sam was going to get booked before he did. The ref was very lenient. Andrew Blatherwick says, one man and his dog down the park was the limit of my ability. Stell. Lee Ingram, I've been watching several different videos, tweets, podcasts from Wrexham and fans. Not one of them gives Notts any credit. Derek Flowers, Stell, does the dartboard ever get used? And are there any holes in the wall around it? Can't quite see whether there's any holes in it. But
there's loads of holes in the wall, but it doesn't get used very often now. I must admit, it doesn't. No, I've not had a picture of anybody to put on it for a while.
Alex Jackson, it's great to see how all the team are enjoying themselves. Great interactions with the crowd adds to the one club feel around the place. Paul Huskisson, do you think last night's game will be on the Wrexham documentary? Kane Porter, Sam was outstanding last night. Rich Hawksworth, Stell Get In t-shirt spotted in the Embankment pub last night. Could be a new fashion phenomenon. Chris Gosling, Lee, I've seen a few isolated messages giving us praise, even one saying how great the ground sounded. One point that was raised on the boards a little while ago, Stell, which I think would be worth an insight from you. We've gone with a much smaller squad this season. And people talking about a very high-intensity game that Notts are playing. Do you think Notts can carry on with this intensity up to twice a week with the current size of squad? Or do you think they need a body or two more in? Obviously, Jim picked up an injury on last night.
I was just going to say that Jim O'Brien was injured, and I thought Jim has been excellent, and I thought he was excellent for half an hour when he was on the pitch. And you know, credit to the squad and credit to Bajrami came on, and he was excellent for the remaining hour that he came on. I'm not going to change my tune from what I said 3-4 weeks ago. I think we will need extra bodies. We do at the minute, but I like to strengthen when you're strong, and when you're stronger than top of the league, having just beat Hollywood, Wrexham, you know, the big team, if you like, in the division that's grabbing all the headlines. And I know since I said that previously a few weeks ago, they brought in Kevin Castro. And again, where would you bring somebody in at the minute? It doesn't. I think it depends how long Jim's going to be out for.
Yeah,
I think that's a big loss. I know we've got Bajrami who can come in. I know there's Sam Austin, but he does a slightly different role. So I'm sure it's something that they're looking at. But again, strengthen while you're strong. Strengthen while you're in a position of strength to get somebody come down here. Maybe that wouldn't come if we were 6th, 7th in the table. When you're sat top of the table, you might find a few more players willing to come and play in the National League. So, you know, that'll be something. But again, I also take the point on of whoever mentioned about the, you know, close, tight-knit squad. Everyone you've got to keep everybody happy. So it's got to be done right. It's not just a case of bodies in for body's sake. But no,
there's an interloper, Stan. There's an interloper, Stell. Your little Muttley, or he looks quite a big Muttley.
Oh, is he?
In the background, near your guitar.
Yeah, well, I've got the door shut. He can't be bothered. He's that old now, and arthritic, not unlike myself, but the door's too tightly shut, he can't get out, so he's just lolloped back down, ain't you, mate? Never mind. He's probably bored of listening to me go on, actually. It's not just people in cars that might fall asleep, it's the dog down here. Where was I? I don't know. No, I look, it's with the intensity that they're playing at, you're going to pick up injuries, I imagine. There's going to be, you can't go through a 46-game season without getting injuries. That's just how things happen. It's, have you got the cover for them? At the minute, I think we just about have. But I wouldn't say we're overloaded in terms of squad size. So for me, and again, not necessarily this week, next week, because we have got, after Saturday, we've got a couple of weeks, haven't we, with just Saturday games. So games aren't exactly thick and fast.
Which you would imagine he would rotate. You would imagine.
Well, the FA Cup,
that one.
The Colville
FA
game,
Cup,
the Colville game, yeah, absolutely. So there's a chance for a breather. There is a chance for players to get rest. There's a chance to get one or two knocks and niggles ironed out. Don't forget there's Aidan Baldwin who's not involved. Joel Taylor's out injured as well at the minute, on his way back. So it's something that will be monitored. And do I think not squad is big enough to cope for 46 games? No. But when you think back over every season, you always have a couple of 3 loan signings, don't you, at certain points to strengthen. Think of Zach Brunt, for example, last season coming in sort of halfway through. So I don't think it's needed this minute, this week, next week, but I'm sure they will have players lined up and they will be having sort of sounding out conversations to see whether players are willing to come, into the building. But again, which areas, it depends on what injuries and who's fatiguing and who's got any niggles that we don't perhaps know about.
Chris Gosling says, I think we probably need some backups as the season goes on, but it's about the timing of when we bring them in. Shane Walker says, bring Frank Vincent back from Aldershot. Chris adds, Bajrami, Castro, Austin, all ahead of Vinny in my view. I think the centre-back position is where we need additional options. I think I've said before, and I would agree with you, Chris, then I think that's possibly one area where we could be exposed. Chris B says, we have Francis too, with Bajrami more likely needed for centre midfield now. We could maybe do with a centre-back depending how long Baldwin is going to be out. Andrew Blatherwick, heavier pitches in winter will take their toll at some point. Chris Gosling, Luther tearing it up at Baseford. The Ultras claim they've already named their clubhouse after him. Derek Flowers, Forest have got an abundance of players. Well, they have, yeah. And then he goes on to say, of National League quality. Not sure whether that's a dig or not, but I think it's fair to say they've got a pretty large squad. Make a call to Steve Cooper. I resist the temptation to say make it quick while he's still there. James Shipley, winter will back up the fixtures at some point. Injuries and fatigue will take their toll. I think we'll need a bit more depth come next year. Right, we're 43 minutes into the show. We've got to have this conversation, Stel. He's 15 goals. And if we class the National League in the four and add it onto the 4 divisions of English football, he is one of English football's hottest properties. And already people are getting worried he's going to go. Now, he's on a 3-year. He's played 12 games for us. I think it would be massively naive not to think that league clubs are already taking a look at it. Clearly, they will be, and they'll be sending scouts down and all the rest of it. How realistic a danger do you think it is that he could go in the January transfer window?
I don't think so. I think that would be, well, Harry Carey from the owners if they did. It would need to be an absolutely unreal offer, and I'm talking 7 figures for him to go in January. So I don't think so. You're absolutely right. There are definitely clubs watching him. I know that. but they can watch. He's
Yes.
on 2.5 years, best part of just over of a contract remaining. So for me, look, I'll always see it as I say it as I see it, and the earliest I think he'll be looked at being able to go is they'll say it'll be the end of the season.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no chance that I can see him going before the end of the season. He's safely under contract. It would take an absolutely astronomical, say probably a 7-figure fee to get them to party or to even think about parting with him in January. And even then, they might decide, no, if we can get into the Football League, then £1 million isn't going to be enough, because his goals could be worth far more than that getting us into the league. And if he did that, his transfer fee would go up anyway. So look, he's just a phenomenon. He's played 12 games, but I mean, if he doesn't score another goal between now and the end of the season, he's still had a decent season. But we certainly hope that isn't the case. I mean, like I said the other day, before Adam Chickson robbed one off him, he was on course for 60 for the season. So look, he's just been fantastic, and he's proved that it's not just a flash in the pan. He's scored in 8 games of the 12. There's been 4 games he hasn't scored in, but he's had chances. He could. Well, of course, all strikers could always have more, but it doesn't look a fluke. You know what I mean? His movement, his availability in the box, his awareness of where he is, where the defenders are around him. It's the centre forward, the goal scoring centre forward that we've been after for years, that every club's after. So they don't grow on trees. It is a skill, but he's been absolutely phenomenal, and aided and abetted by a phenomenal Notts team in them games. So he's not beating 6 men on his own and rattling one into the top corner, but he is an absolutely at what he does in this team. He is the jigsaw piece that absolutely is hopefully, and we're only a quarter of the way through the season, hopefully that missing piece that we've not had for years, 10, 12 years.
Yeah, I agree with every word you said there, Stel. I think we should also reiterate huge decision by Luke Williams, because when we had Macca came on and did his one-on-one interview at the start of the season, and Kedwin Scott, when my son finally finishes the edit, which should be later this week, Macaulay didn't play this role at Gateshead. Didn't play this role. He was pulled by Luke into the office, and Luke said, "Look, I want you to play a different way. I want you in that middle third. I want you in and around the box. Yeah, a central role, sniffing it out." And Kedwin says in his interview with us that Mac has come home, and when they were in the same digs together, and gone, I feel a bit nervous, and if I can do that, not done that before, and clearly he has taken to it remarkably well, because for all intents and purposes, he looks like yourself, like a Tony Cottee. He seems to have his feet seem to be at the right angles, that when he hits shots, firstly they're always on target, and a lot of the time they're always at an angle where the keeper's hands can't get. He just seems to have got that, and I'm sure you would notice this more than anyone. When he has a chance, it's probably 80 to 90% of the time the keeper has to make a save or it's in the net.
Well, he's got the abilities and the skills and the talent that you need to be a good striker. What you're talking about there is hitting the target. Not wasting chances, not wasting your shots. At least make the keeper make a save. Make your movement right. Be aware of where the defender is. You don't have to run here, there, and everywhere. Although he works his socks off out of possession. I think his work rate out of possession is fantastic as well. With somebody who scored goals like that, you could quite easily forgive him, and you see it at all levels, for thinking, well, I've sort of done my bit. I don't need to do the dirty bit, the chasing back, the hassling, the harrying. But he does. He does his job for the team fantastically well. But in terms of basically in the penalty area, he's got that ability to not be marked, not stand by a defender, not make the run that defenders are expecting, not go in an area where defenders are. So that doesn't necessarily mean, you do training sessions where you go one striker near post, one striker far post, midfield player going in the middle is the general basic setup. But if defenders stand there, then you've got to have hold on a minute, I ain't going to run to where the defender, I've got to maybe just adjust that. So it's nothing is ever black and white in football. It's not like a game of chess because you have time to stop, think nothing's moving, it's all there. Football's constantly moving. You very rarely get the same situation twice in terms of all 22 players in the same positions. And then you've got to assess, where's he going? Where is he off balance? Can I just pull a little half a yard? And a decent striker only needs half a yard of space. One touch, put the ball in the back of the net. Last night, the goal, I mean, it's credit to the work they've done on the training ground. Obviously, the set piece routine that they've done and the individual skills of the players to execute that. But who they got on the end of it is Macaulay, because who do you want on the end of it? Well, you want your best finisher, and he's the one that's into space. Now, you would think, how the hell are Wrexham not marking him? He's the one man you wouldn't leave free. But defenders and all teams at all levels get distracted by that round thing. When that's in motion and players are running, they get distracted and switch off, lose concentration of what they're supposed to be doing. Might be for half a second, but it happens. And can you exploit that? And the best strikers, by hitting the target, by being in the right place, by having the composure and the skill and the technique to hit the target and put it away from the keeper, not to hit the keeper. I was critical of his header, that he gave the keeper a chance in the second minute, because do you know what? I'm expecting him to score that. I would expect to score that, and I'm sure he would. And you can ask him that. I'm sure he would have expected to score that even early on in the game. But he's that good of a finisher. He's got that ability that, he's going to score. He's going to get chances game after game, because Notts are a good team in this league. They're going to create chances. He'll get chances. And with his ability, like we've spoken about ad infinitum, about it's not luck when the ball keeps landing at your feet 3 yards out, 6 yards out, 5 yards out. Yeah, once or twice might be a bit of luck. Oh, right, centre half's got one. Look, tap in. A little bit of luck. He's just right place, right time. Strikers make a living on that. Strikers, that is their bread and butter. Tony Cotty's, Gary Lineker's the one that I go back to. Absolutely make a living on assessing what's going on about you, be it where the ball is, what your teammate's doing. What's that teammate doing? Is he a certain person gets his head up and knocks it in early? Does he have 3 touches? Does he like to do a trick? So in that case, alter your run. Where's the defender? Is he off balance? Can you give him a little nudge and then get yourself half a yard? Whatever it might be, strikers, good strikers, know it. And for Macaulay, we're putting him in the Lee Hughes bracket because that's the name that everyone's going to mention, and probably rightly so, in terms of the amount of goals he scored, the likelihood that he looks like scoring goals. It just looks like he isn't going to stop scoring goals. I would say, of course, to temper things a little bit, Lee Hughes did it at a higher level, and Lee Hughes at this moment in time was a far better player. But Macaulay Langstaff's got time on his side. Hughes is finished and done. His stats are in the record, but Macaulay Langstaff can only add to his. So let's see where he goes, and I'm sure he'll be here for the full season, unless he kicks off, and I'm sure he's not going to do that. But he'll be here for the season, and who knows where he'll be at the end of the season in terms of goals, in terms of where Notts are. But we are talking about him in the bracket of Lee Hughes. And I don't think we're missing out anybody that's been in between. Kyle Wootton was a fantastic striker for Notts and did a different role, did far more than just score goals. But I think Macaulay is going to be, he's in the same breath as Hughesy now. I think if he stays for a season at least, then he'll be absolutely held in the same esteem and the same breath. And if he scores the goals that gets promotion, then who knows? People have short memories these days.
Yeah, to echo your sentiments there, Stel, I would be massively surprised if he is still not with us going into the summer. I think clearly it's a good bit of business by the club to have him on a 3-year rather than a 2-year. If you're on a 2-year, effectively, you're going to have to cash your chips in next summer, or the player can run the gamble himself of running the clock down in the final season when clearly your value reduces all the time. So I think the fact that the club have him on a 3-year deal is clearly good business for the club, but also obviously good for Macaulay as well. And I think that whatever figure is offered to Notts, I think you've got to weigh that up against the cost of promotion, And to me, the cost of Notts getting into the Football League, if you were an owner of Notts County and you had a few quid, which Alex and Christoph do, and someone said to you, you can pay a sum of money and I'll wave my magic wand and you will be promoted. Now, if I'm an owner with a lot of money, I'd actually pay a lot more than 1 million quid. I think it's probably worth, I don't know. I mean, if you look at the losses in this division, it's probably got to be worth 3 or 4 million quid for Notts to be promoted. And so I don't see there's any way you can say that without Macaulay Langstaff, Notts are not significantly hampered and weakened. And I know a small section of our supporter base keep trumpeting this, we're buying players to improve them and sell them on. I don't see that. The only player we sold for money was Callum Roberts. Everybody else, Kyle Wotton, his contract ran through. Ruben's still here in the final year of his agreement. So I'd be very surprised. There's only one set of circumstances I could possibly see whereby you could sell him. Would be if you sold him and he was then loaned back for the rest of the season. But again, that's a club that would have to be pretty determined to get him, to pay a substantial sum of money and then leave him with you, if you like, because that has happened at 1 or 2 clubs in the past. But no, I would be very, very surprised. Very, very surprised. So hopefully with these, Macaulay will be on course for 40 goals plus. Right, we're almost an hour done. We've not even mentioned Woking. Right. So brilliant last night. Woking have done pretty well this season still, haven't they? I mean, they're playoffs. They've won quite a few of their games. After the Lord Mayor's show and all of that, as one of the guys on our message board said, it's not back to bread and butter, is it? But you want to emphasise your credentials as a top of the table team now, yeah?
No, absolutely. I mean, the old saying, the next game is always the most important, is probably as true as it ever as after you have a result like last night. Because for all the euphoria that we're all feeling, that the players will have felt, that everybody will be, that comes crashing so far down to earth if Saturday is a damp squib and we get done. So, there's no magic wand way of guarding against it. It's just another game against tough opposition away from home. But if they could win the game Saturday, I mean, easier said than done, of course. But if they win the game Saturday, you then look at it. Colville is a week's time in the FA Cup, and with no disrespect meant to them or the competition, that's not our focus this season. Of course, we want to win that game, but I think we'll put a team out with the intent of winning that game. But this is a 3-game week with Wrexham sandwiched in the middle. We don't want Saturday to be after the Lord Mayor's show and come away with, that win against Wrexham was great, but now we've seen them leapfrog straight back over as we stayed at the top for 3-4 days because we didn't get the job done at Woking. And again, there's no guarantees we'll get the job done at Woking, but the importance of that game to just keep the feeling, the momentum going, the confidence high. There's no reason why they can't go to Woking and win. There's no reason they can't go anywhere and win. But the importance of Saturday after the euphoria of last night, just means that the crash will be so much further if we do disappoint on Saturday. I don't expect them to. I think Luke Williams, and don't think Luke Williams has had enough praise yet. I know he's only been manager for 12 games. I don't think, and we've talked about Macaulay, of course, and we talked Ruben, and we talked one or two other players, of course, and things like that. But I think he has got to take enormous credit for how he's got the team playing in such a short space of time. The work rate. I said when he came in, I didn't think it was going to be revolution. It would be evolution, which it is, because we still play possession-based football through the thirds, building up from the back. But there's a work rate and a hunger and a drive that I haven't seen in them last season. And he's the only man that's got that, because it's not wholesale changes in terms of personnel. And arguably a couple of the better players have gone. Jayden Richardson, Cal Roberts. But he's managed to come in, get a team together, and instill that drive and discipline and standards and hunger, fight, resilience. Great word nowadays. Resilience should be used all over the place, whether it's football or life. But it's a great word. But I don't think, I don't hear many people, maybe because I'm not on social media particularly, so I don't hear many people, they might be going absolutely mad for Luke Williams, but I think what he's done has been absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I mean, you can say, look, a large part of the squad were there and the players were there. Yeah, they were, but they weren't producing this. They weren't producing. He's taken them players and added something to them. This work rate out of possession, the higher press. They play a higher line, which gets caught out. Got caught out against Altrincham. Got caught out last night. Didn't get punished. But that's the way they play it. And somebody mentioned Sam Slocum's starting position. Well, that'll be as a result of the higher line. So Sam is wanted to start further out. He's the sweeper keeper now, if you like. But that all comes from the manager and the head coach and Ryan Harley as well, his coaching staff as well. They all have to take massive credit for that, because the difference is, you genuinely see a team that are top of the table now. And I don't see, like I say, the only thing we're talking about is will they run out of steam, which indicates we all think they've got the quality and they are deserving of where they are. Will they run out of steam? Other teams might run out of steam trying to catch us. That's what I'm looking at. Let's look at the positive of that. So I think Luke Williams deserves massive credit, but the biggest test he's got now is getting everybody right for Woking, because as I said, Sam Slocum and all of us were looking forward to that game last night. That was the focus. That maybe explained a little bit of a poor performance at Altrincham, where he says, Luke Williams came out a little bit disappointed, didn't think we worked hard enough, got the result done. But now, after the big game in the week, the atmosphere won't be anything like that at Woking. So there's a bit of self-motivation having to come into it, and it's getting yourself back up, climbing the mountain again, because having beat Wrexham on a Tuesday, that counts nothing to when you start on 3:00 on a Saturday at Woking. So they've got to do it all over again. And that's what the focus they've always got to have is, it's the next game. Nothing more, nothing less. The next game is always the focus. So, like I say, tough game as well, because Woking are better this year, by all accounts, than we've seen in previous years.
Chris Gosling says, if we agree 100 points, we had this debate on Monday still, 100 points is needed to win the league, that means we can only drop 27 points in the next 34 games. He's actually corrected that to 29. At the moment, Notts are on for 103 points. Wrexham are on for 99 as a result of losing to us. Are you of an opinion this, if not necessarily quite as high as that, but are you thinking this needs to be a fairly large number of points by normal National League title targets?
Yeah, I think so. I think this season, it seems, and we haven't played all the teams, but I think the way that the results are going and the way it looks, I think there's going to be a gap between the top 3, 4, 5 teams, and then there's a lot of teams that are always capable of causing an upset, always going to be there and thereabouts, but not really pushing for the top spot. So I see a gap developing this season that maybe hasn't been there in the seasons that Notts have been there. And I think Notts, I said before the start of the season, I see nothing to change it. The team that finishes above Wrexham will win the league. And I don't see anything to change that. In terms of points, I mean, that could be any amount, obviously, but I think there will be a bit of a breakaway group. If I'm honest, personally, I think it'd be us, Wrexham, Chesterfield, and I think Solihull Moors. I think they'll come good. I think they've got good players. They've got goals. They're not bad defensively, but I think they'll be there. And then you'll have the likes of Bromley and Boreham Wood, who I bracket together, who will be, next echelon down, but I don't think they'll be up there for the title. And then there's a lot of teams that are fighting for, sort of 6th, 7th, 8th and down. And I don't think there's a great deal between a lot of teams and maybe the next 10 teams in the division. So I think there's going to be a gap. And I think because Wrexham are strong, I think because we are strong, I think there's possibly going to need to be a higher points total than recent years. But again, I'm often wrong. So, my predictions are never always great. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope we can win the league with 72 points. But, as long as we win the league, as long as we finish top, I'm not bothered.
Chris Gosling says, I think the belief in Luke Williams was shown by the fan base by not overreacting to the defeat at Dorking because we had seen the foundations that are being put in place. James Shipley, you can see Williams' influence in all areas. Love the high-intensity pressing and the wingers attacking the back post, things we didn't see too much of last season. Zedo, hopefully we can put out a good team and substitute sensibly to get a result Saturday. After that, a good lot of players can get a break next weekend, not disrespecting Colville. I think that about wraps it up tonight. We're obviously all very happy, full of the joys of autumn. Won't be straightforward getting there. Can't go on the train on Saturday because of the train strike. Never mind, you can get down there, but all trains stop after about 4:30. So looks like we'll be driving. You going down there and back on the day, Stel?
Yeah, on the day. It's it's not far enough for an overnight. We'll start early in the morning.
Yeah. Now I had meant to check this out with the club, but I forgot, and I don't know whether you or Charlie have picked up on this. We wore the home shirt because normally we always change at York. No one's 100% sure why, but obviously there is a maroon red colour in York's kit, as is lavender. I think I have to quit. Is the right word, isn't it? Lavender. Now I don't know whether that was deemed a clash. Woking red and white. So it will be interesting to see whether we are in black and white. Not that anyone in football is ever superstitious, Stel, but obviously we did win away from home in black and white. So I will be interested to see whether we're black and white on Saturday.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I don't think there was a reason. I think Jason Turner gets the sort of say on what kit we're going to wear and things like that. So why we wore black and white at York, I don't exactly know, but it's generally to do with a perceptive clash. But it can't be, whatever kit we wear, it can't be as bad as that night up at Gateshead where all the lavender against their kit. We barely had an idea who was on what team that night. Yeah. That was terrible. So it's going to be better than that. It's still going to be daylight, isn't it, on Saturday? So, I'm not bothered what kit they wear as long as we get the same sort of performance and certainly the same result.
Jurgen Halligan's on his Harley to the Lifeline event. Is it tomorrow? Right, okay. Yeah, you can have afternoon tea with Dean Thomas singing Frank Sinatra. There you go. That's tomorrow. That's like Thursday afternoon.
It's like an Alan Partridge event, that, isn't it? It's like Partridge talking into his dictaphone.
Don't let Lynn hear you say that.
Exactly.
Rich Hawker says, great job again, chaps. Thank you very much. Pleasure. We will be trying to sort them out with iTunes. There have been issues for the last 2 or 3 weeks, which is why they've not been going on as regularly as they used to, but we are trying to sort that. Kedwin Scott should be, fingers crossed this week, as long as my lad pulls his finger out with the editing. You haven't missed it yet. It's very good. I will ensure everyone knows when it's gone live. Rich Hawksworth, Paul, can you get Dino onto Serenaders? Blimey. He did actually, I don't know if you ever watched it. During lockdown, he used to pipe up on a video himself on a Saturday evening and sing songs to everyone. Karaoke. Yeah. A man of many talents. A man of many talents. That's it for tonight, everyone. Great week so far. I think the emphasis, as Stell mentioned earlier, it's a 3-game week. 2 down, 1 to go. Let's hope we can make it a hat-trick of wins. Thank you very much indeed for listening in tonight. Thank you for all your comments, and we look forward to catching up again soon. Thanks again, Stell, for all your time.
Cheers. No problem.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.